Hey everybody, I'm Ted Price from Insomniac Games. Today on the Game Maker's Notebook, I had an absolutely fantastic chat with Luke Smith of Bungie. Luke is the executive creative director for the Destiny universe. We talked briefly about what the Destiny universe means to Luke, and then we dove deep into the Destiny games themselves. We covered a wide range of topics from designing repeatable gameplay for live services games to balancing a massive work like Destiny for both newcomers and veterans. We talked about Bungie's approach to ensuring an experience is always player friendly. Plus, Luke shared his thoughts about our industry and how it can support a wide variety of massive live services games at the same time, and much more. Please join us. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ted. This is awesome.
I got to tell you, it's been a real it's something I've been looking forward to talking to you. And it's not just because I'm interested in talking to you, it's because a good friend of yours, Brian Intihar, works at Insomniac as a creative director on Spider-Man. And he's been saying to me, I got to get Luke on the show. Got to talk to him. And
I think we talked about doing this probably in late February of 2020 originally. And then a lot of stuff happened. I mean, you were playing some Destiny then. I think Brian was playing some Destiny, Destiny 2 during that period. And yeah, Brian is a longtime buddy of mine. I think we're coming up on our 16 or 17 year maniversary. Time we've been friends.
That is great. Well, that's one of the coolest things about this industry is that as we all manage to stay in it, we form these really long-lasting friendships. And it is a small industry, isn't it?
It is deeply small, and it's surprising to me how much will come back around. Whether it's like when I started at Bungie back in 2007, my first day I walked into the studio, and designer Jamie Griesemer, who's like our sandbox genius in Halo 1, 2, 3, etc., came up and grabbed me immediately when I walked through the door and was like, you're the jerk who wrote the article about Broken Halo, about Halo 2. And just immediately just accosted with like dumb things that I'd said, in my like mid 20s. So yeah, it does stick with you.
I love that. Well, the fact that you've been a games journalist is really interesting, and Brian was too. And I find it fascinating that there are games journalists who have moved into positions of prominence within the games industry, like yourself, like Brian, like Chris Charla at Xbox, like Andy McNamara at EA. What do you think has been sort of driving that for games for y'all?
I don't know about what's driving everyone else. I'll talk about myself. I think for me it was really brief. It was a short period between Kotaku and One Up, like early period Kotaku, back before articles were signed. Like it was back when everything was just from the site. And it was wanting to do something with the shred of talent I felt like I had as a writer. And it wasn't about writing video games. I thought I'd go to Bungie and just write jokes for the internet. Like for me, it wasn't ever I'm going to go make video games. I want to go, get opportunities like what I've ended up with. It was more of hey, I want to see things on the other side. And I felt like the media side, whether it was all the way back to when I was doing rock and roll writing a long time ago, or some of the games press stuff for a couple of years there, I felt like it was preparing me to talk a little bit with the developers about their side of the story. And I looked at it more like, hey, I'm going to go try to do Almost Famous from inside the house. I'm going to go do the Patrick Fugit role inside Bungie. And that, I started thinking about it that way. But then a year after I started, is just an opportunity. Someone, a producer named Alan Murray on the Halo Reach project, knew that I loved World of Warcraft. And so I wore that on my sleeve there. They gave me some opportunities to think about player investment design, and I got surrounded by a bunch of really talented engineers and had a great manager. And the creative director, Marcus Lato, gave me a lot of opportunity and freedom. And so for me, it was the beginning of a series of opportunities and learning. And so that was like kind of the origination of it, was just someone saying, hey, do you want to think about what it would mean to have persistence in a Halo game?
Wow, that's a great start. I think having those opportunities, it's probably rare that most people run into those sort of open-ended questions and get a chance to answer them. So how did you answer that question?
I mean, very loquaciously, probably to start. back this was in 2008, and I didn't know anything about writing design documents or spec work or anything like that. And so it was a pretty learn by doing and sharing your ideas with. I mean, I'm not saying this in some like faux humble way. I think it's just true. Like a bunch of folks who are smarter than I am. Like I was working with engineers. I got to work with engineers who I think are like total geniuses and legends, and like a bunch of them are still at the company, like David Aldrich and Luke Timmons and Bob Glessner. And, I love those guys. And they really did help me take these like 65-page like documents, which don't ever write a 65-page design document for investment systems and UI work. Don't ever do that. And really like sharpen it and get it to a place where it was something we could act on and then build. And those fellows and Brad Fish, who's no longer at the company, those fellows built an interface that allowed designers to do a bunch of data work and like data, and you're like building data stacks and testing them. And it was a lot of on the job learning. It was some of the most fun I've got to have at the company. And that's not like a relitigation of the last 14 years since, but rather like, oh my gosh, like getting in there and making stuff in our Bonobo tool was, I enjoyed that. I absolutely enjoyed that. And so I was happy to leave it all in the field, I guess, so to speak.
Well, it seems to have paid off, not for everybody. I mean, because since then, Destiny and Destiny 2 have become juggernauts in the industry. And if I don't want to go through all the how Destiny was built and now Destiny 2 came about, but I think I'd rather jump ahead to what you do today as executive creative director, and what does that mean for behemoth like Destiny 2?
Yeah. So for Destiny 2, it means very little. We have a leadership team who's responsible for Destiny 2, and they work with my longtime production partner Mark Noseworthy and I on charting the future, both for Destiny 2, and Mark and I now are responsible for expanding the Destiny brand. It's more than we have this awesome MMO FPS game that I still love to this day, and it's really about looking at looking at the IP in the universe and trying to chart a bigger path forward for it, beyond this one type of game into other experiences, whether it's other games, other forms of media, and it's to not get too, full, like, highfalutin about it. Like the joke that I make to Mark is like, this is like the mission that people go on and oftentimes die on, doing, which is, it's not a place where there's a lot of prior art for great success at taking a video game property to outside of video games. I think there's some success with properties like board games. I think there's some stuff there where video games have translated pretty well to board games. But for us, it's looking at the Destiny universe and the mission, and thinking about how can we make this a universe that lasts and continues beyond a single a pair of awesome MMO projects. And that's the mission that us and a bunch of teams are on.
That's an exciting mission. So in doing that, what kind of questions do you ask?
um, I mean, we ask a lot. Are we sure this is the right thing? We are. There's no shortage of wondering if what we're doing is the right thing with Destiny. I think for us, it's about trying to make sure that what we do with Destiny does two things really, like honors our existing fans and welcomes new fans into the universe. Like I love Star Wars. I loved it as a kid. I probably love it less now than I loved it as a kid, and in part it's because it's not as for me as it used to be. I'm old. It wants to age down. It wants to get younger, and I'm not mad at Star Wars for doing that. Like I understand why they want to do that. I understand why they make the decisions that they're making. And I'm not sure exactly when this will air, but we're gonna sit around the couch and watch Obi-Wan when that comes out. We're gonna check that out, and I hope that the folks in my family get a kick out of it. I hope they all like it. It doesn't really matter to me if I like it or not. And so to tie this all the way back to Destiny, it's really about thinking beyond the the audience of today into what the future of Destiny could be, who could be there on the metaphorical couch, holding the controller or the remote, if you will, and what are we creating for them? And then how does it feel like for that core fan, that core Destiny person like me? How do I feel like, I'm still in love with this thing too?
Do you think that the audience's appetite for sort of transmedia properties has changed in the last couple of years? And I say this in a positive way because it seems like, in my opinion, we are seeing more success with video game IPs showing up in other parts of the entertainment world.
I think there's gonna be. I mean, I think for fandom in general, there's gonna be. When you love something, I think you want to see it in kind of as many places that you can get your hands on it and love it. And so, um, I'm trying to not be too clouded by recent executions. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the space. I know that with a whole bunch of the platforms and the kind of transmedia content wars that we see. I know there's a lot coming. There's been a lot created, and there's going to be more. And I think some of that stuff's really going to hit. Like I'll say for us, you know, uh, you know, for The Witcher really worked for just to be like to talk about media for 30 seconds here. The Witcher really worked in part because it inherits from the spirit of the game, which is a translation on the novels, obviously. But you can watch the show and you can feel the game in the show in this way where you're like, oh yeah, this is the part where you're talking to the NPC quest giver. You're getting like a bunch of exposition in the show, and then you're like going out with Henry Cavill, out into the wilderness, and it's a great show, but you can feel some of the DNA from the game in there, and it might not tell exactly the same beats, or it takes place in a different era, I think, than the game does, and so they have a lot of air cover there to avoid like you didn't follow this exact piece. And I think that's important too, is to find air cover. Where can you set an extension? Where can you set something that deepens a universe so that your like audience that you have today feels like they still own the part that they have really sunk their time and their in Destiny's case, they're like time, energy, lives, social bonds into.
That's a great point. I actually had the same feelings about Arcane when I watched that, and just seeing Jinx and how Jinx was portrayed and Jinx's origins was super super cool for me, as somebody who's played League of Legends. And I thought, so I'm excited to see what how y'all take it and run with it. Obviously, because
Long,
holy
long
cow, is there
ways
some more?
off.
Well, you
Long,
got
long, long ways off. The stuff takes a lot of stuff takes a super long time, and so we don't. We're really exploring options and thinking about what are the what are the right bets to place on the table, and
yeah.
you don't always get them right. You're like I my betting percentage is not 100. Like I certainly have not made great decisions every time out. And so, I hope that we just continue to learn and, make new mistakes as we go, not old ones.
That that makes sense. Well, you have a very large and I think very happy fan base who's ready to go on that journey with you. So
We hope so, and they are large, and they oscillate. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're not, and that also is just the kind of nature of the living game.
yeah,
Like the living game is a game where, I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago from outside the company. They were talking about Destiny. And they're like, "Oh, I like love that game, but I hate it." I'm like, like perfect summation, like perfect. Like when I played a ton of World of Warcraft, like I loved that game, and no game made me angrier.
yeah,
That like transaction of game for time means it's really charged, and you're constantly at risk of. You should be asking yourselves questions like, are we doing what's right for them for their time? Are we doing what's right for them for the hobby that they're experiencing? And it's a really hard balance with a lot of bruises and broken bones for us along the way. Like we haven't always got it right.
Well, with that in mind, I said I wasn't going to ask much about how Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 were made, but I was kidding. I want to go and help you explore some of those broken bones and bruises and talk a little bit about the origin of Destiny and really what was like. And so specifically, when Bungie launched Destiny 1, I remember this, right? I remember it being a big deal. And I was wondering as a player, wow, did they are jumping off the cliff. Is there any go no go criteria here where at some point they look at what's the number of players and they go, this isn't working, or this is working, we're going to double down. Did Do you know if those conversations were happening? And
I do. Yeah, we there was someone at Bungie who described. I mean, for the cost profile of the project, like I'm not going to talk the specifics of the numbers, but Destiny, we have a large team. Like I mean, we have like something like 640 plus, development team on Destiny. We make a lot of content, and we have way more folks on D2 than we had on Destiny 1. And Destiny 1 came out and had very mixed, earned mixed responses. Like I want, that we did a lot of late changes to things in that game for sometimes for the better. I think ultimately, we made a bunch of good decisions there, but it came at the cost of some stuff like our story, which became, like a meme in a bunch of ways. And so that game comes out, it performs pretty well from a, new users, new IP launch. Like the marketing folks would want me to say like, oh, it was like the biggest new IP of that gen. So like, yes, totally. But we always felt like we probably could have done better, and we had we were already loading up DLCs at that point. We had stuff that was in flight for the raid team, which was the team I was working closest with before moving to that first kind of expansion set, Taken King, and we had been working on we wrapped VOG in probably close to early spring 2014, and immediately moved to Crota's End and started building that. And so we had loaded up stuff, we had destination work that we'd been doing, like the Dreadnought where Taken King took place was a thing that was in development, well before that project, knew what it was going to be. And so we had kind of, we were pretty pot committed to it. We were in, and we were kind of just going to see what happened. And we had, we had a publisher who was willing to spend the money.
yeah, which is awesome. Awesome that you went for it, you had the backing, and you kept going. And were there times where you asked, is it going to hit? Are we going to hit critical mass? Or did you hit some sort of critical mass early enough that those concerns went away?
Well, I don't think we were ever. I don't think the concerns have ever gone away.
Okay.
Like I think we still. It still feels to us like we're playing from behind in a bunch of ways. Like even with the, like I'll just give an example of D1 to D2. Like every 2 weeks now in Destiny 2, we have this awesome live ops meeting with immense amount of data science, telemetry, community metrics, and it's like an hour-long presentation that's from a mix of data scientists, publishing, community, just like presenting information over the last 2 weeks. We have compared to Destiny 1, where we had no information, no telemetry, we were very unsophisticated. We didn't know much at all. It's me like trying to not swear on the call. We didn't know very much about running a live service business. Period. That was not our pedigree. Where I think we've gotten to today is we have a really strong live service business, understanding, stronger than it was when we started, and we've built a bunch of process and like hired a bunch of super smart people. Like that's the thing. Like almost all of us joined Bungie. 15 years ago for me, like I didn't join it because I knew what Destiny was. Like I joined because of Halo. I loved Halo games. Loved Halo 1. And so what's happened over the last 8 years since we've been in market with the Destiny projects is people have joined Bungie because they love Destiny. They've joined Bungie kind of understanding what we were building. And that has in turn leveled up the craft of trying to build this awesome, action MMO game. Like that has, we've brought people in. I'm sure y'all at Insomniac, you've made so many different kinds of games, right? People probably joined for one thing, and then over time there's something else, and then people join for another thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, we gotta garden the staff in this way because we're not making that right now. And so, we've gotten to the place now where a bunch of folks come to Bungie to work on Destiny, which is awesome. and that also allows us to do this really great thing, which is reload Destiny with fresh folks, and then get some of our longtime Destiny folks off into new experiences, new creative endeavors for them that we hope they can find some new satisfaction in too.
That was going to be one of my later questions, but it's great to hear you bring that up. When one is working, it's not, you've already answered it, but I'll just kind of restate it. Uh, Certainly, when one is working on a game that's sort of high pressure, you're putting out a lot of content, it must demand some change at time. People must demand change. How do you recognize when it's time for folks to shift onto something else when they've been just, you know, so focused on one thing?
You want to try. I mean, you want to try to get to it before they quit. And
Okay.
I'm like, again, I was talking to, I had I think it was in 2018 spring. So after Destiny 2 came out, and that was a really tough time for for the studio, tough time for me, and I messaged a friend of mine. I'm not sure that he'd want to. Yeah, well, I messaged Jeff Kaplan from Overwatch/WoW, and I've known Jeff for a long time. I got to interview him a long time ago, and I asked him this question: How do you know How do you know when you're done? Like, because he left Lich King after Lich King, and he went to work on other stuff, and piloted the first Overwatch game to immense success. And I felt pretty done, like as a person on the Destiny MMO project. I was it's pretty done. D2 was a tough project. I think we could have made better decisions, throughout. It was rushed in ways that I wish it wasn't, and I felt pretty torched by the whole thing. And I just sent this one 2 line email to Jeff, and we didn't talk very often at that point. And he sent me this giant email back. And one of the things that stuck out to me, and I talked to our folks about it today, certainly as they're talking about being fatigued on the project, which is everyone has a wick in service games, and once you start, that wick starts to burn down, and you gotta figure out how you can lengthen your own wick. Like, how can you keep yourself on the project longer, and how can you make sure that you move to something else before your time's expired, because you don't want the wick to burn down and the dynamite to blow. I mean, this industry, you have an NFL like shelf life for a lot of folks. It's short, it's real short. And so, how can we keep people, motivated and engaged? And what can we, what can the company do? And I think we're getting better. I'm not going to sit here and say Bungie's perfect or figured it all out. It's really hard. And the continued pressure of shipping to a player base that is very hungry, insatiable, I would say, is pretty immense. When you couple that in with the almost the near instant feedback responses that you get from things like social media today, it can be really tough. And I think things like that can really shorten the wick of folks on the team. I don't think I've answered your question yet, but I've given you some context, and we can keep going.
It helps. And it brings up another really good topic to discuss. And that is just to explain to folks who don't work on live services teams what the sort of that difference is between, say, a single player game that's a 4-year production and a live services game where you are putting out, like Destiny, a lot of different content, but the game is never truly shipping. What, how does that feel as a team member, as a leader on the team? What's different about it?
So I remember when I joined Bungie, it was shortly before Halo 3. Like, Halo 3 was closing down, and I remember when Halo 3 shipped, the studio was like really empty. Like, there was like a period where people just were gone, like for like a couple of weeks or something. I was like, they were writing weekly updates with Frankie and Gerard or something, and so the studio emptied out. And of course, there was stuff that the team was going to improve. I'm sure we patched stuff for Halo 3, like BR spread or something like that. Maybe we never did. It's a long time ago. But for us, like, it's a finish line. And for live service projects, or projects that are continue, like, it's the starting point. It's the place where you have a thing in your head, you and the team, not like, I'm not saying like some singular person, with the time that you've had to construct this experience, Destiny and Destiny project. um, you've tested it, you've played it internally, you think it's one thing, And maybe you're right, but maybe you're wrong. And you're going to find out on day 0, on day +7, on day +14, and you're going to see what the game you thought you were making turns into as it gets into the hands of the players. And they're going to have feedback and they're going to have stuff that they want to change. And sometimes their changes are good. Sometimes your changes you're like, that's not totally going to work for reason X or Y. And you can get into like a really awkward game of tennis with your community in some ways. But if you ignore all of that and just get to the truth is the game is going to evolve once it comes in contact with other folks. It's called live service because you are providing a service. Like they're your squad, they're your people, they're your customers. I don't like that word here, but you're providing something to them. And so, that the relationship changes. It goes from a shared vision for the team into this bigger collective of what we're trying to do. And I think for us, we have, at different points along the way, made decisions about the project, like when it was in our heads, like, we were trying to do the right things before D1 launch, right? And there was some stuff that we did really well, and some stuff that, having, purple engram decode into a blue maybe didn't work the right way. Maybe that was the thing that was like better left in our heads. And so it really it's a lot like yeah, to conclude the rambling here, it can't really be yours anymore
Yeah.
because it has to be theirs. And that's part of this mentality that you have to get to when you're running a live service project. Similarly, it's a lot like the same thought process around mentorship and guidance, developing new leaders. Like it's got to be their project for them to feel like they're responsible for it.
Does that in some ways rob individual creators of the ownership that they might have over aspects of the story or regression because players are so vocal about what they want in the game? Is that what you mean?
Well, I think it can. I think you certainly can get into a situation where you could feel like you are being directed by a crowd that you're listening to, which I think is a dangerous spot to get to. Like I think crowds are really intelligent at problem identification, just in general. I think they're intelligent at problem identification. They oftentimes struggle um, to propose solutions because they don't have all the context, like what it would take to do thing X or thing Y. But problem identification, they're super duper smart at. And so I think when you're thinking about building into service, what are your plans for helping surface and identify problems, and what are the things that you're going to look at as like leading indicators for what creates the problems? Like no one wants to hear it, but you want to have pretty advanced data and telemetry and information beyond oh my I'm having a bad day in my Twitter mentions, we got to make some changes. You like which you're gonna have good days and you're gonna have bad days in your Twitter mentions. That's just how it goes. um, but you want to supplement that data point with more information too.
Was there a point between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 where you flipped over from that sort of emotional response to what you're seeing on the web to something that was much, much more data driven? Because you did mention the difference in reporting between one project and the other.
Yeah, so it was as we got into Destiny 2 further than the launch window that we really stood up the live ops arm, really developed. I think really got moving in the post D2 launch period. Like we had some pretty low periods there, and then our we had ahead of D2 launching, we had started to bring in some of the really talented folks who would become the core of the live ops like reporting group and the data scientists. And so that infrastructure was being built as we were closing down Destiny 2 in a bunch of ways. We had stuff throughout Destiny 1, like daily active users and things like that. We've always had like a board up that tells you like how are things going, versus now we have pretty rich scorecards of how things are doing, just sets of data that we're looking at. And I think we've gotten much more sophisticated even in our like sampling of what players are using across skill types. And that stuff's been awesome, really awesome to see come online, because I love, I don't do it now because it would not be, it's not the job, but I love trolling through that stuff and seeing like, oh, the top 5% of PvP players are using these kind of weapons. Like, oh, it's totally different than what the, you know, bad kids like me are using. That's fascinating. Like they're able to do things with guns that I'm not. Yeah.
Does it ever refute what you have assumed based on what people are just saying online?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of freakonomics type stuff like that. You'll see just like you can't walk into a Destiny thread of the internet without people being like, that game's still around. I thought it was dead. Isn't it? Like it's like that game's died, just dead again, right? And you're like, I don't know, man. Like the yeah, we're pretty, we're still around, still alive, still kicking. We've still got a lot of miles left on the road here. Yeah.
That's reassuring, I suppose, to see the numbers every single day and just to know.
Yeah,
And you have a rabid fan base, right? The numbers
yeah. Oh, yeah. We
prove
have
it
we have
out.
a super dedicated group of fans who are, you know, daring us to do better and pushing us and also consuming as much content as we can put in front of them. So
Well, those
doing it.
fans come back every day, and I know a lot of them do at least. And one of the things I've always wondered is very straightforward in statement, but hard to figure out is how do you design a combat setup that keeps players coming back again and again to play through it again and again? Is it different than designing single player setups?
It is in some ways different. I think some of it is certainly, we've had different approaches at the combat design level over the years where we have had, more randomness, less randomness. Like an example is, for a while we went with, when Destiny 1 came out, I believe, and like someone will for sure correct this if I'm wrong, but I believe we shipped with almost no strike variability. So you would play a strike, like a 3-person dungeon. It's kind of the same every time.
Yeah.
The design for that was because we felt like you could begin to do it. It could increase your sense of mastery if you're like doing it faster, getting more kills. You understand the encounter setup. It means you can like mentally prepare, like, oh, after I kill the servitor, then the fallen dregs are going to come out of this hallway and I'm going to Gjallarhorn them. And you could like develop your own rhythm and play style and try to go through it quicker. And that works in some ways. We still largely do have consistent setups in places like the raids for the most part. I mean, there's some variability in there. And then we moved to a period where we had strike variability, and we've kind of moved back and forth at times there, and there'll be like different versions of a strike now, and so we try to provide more opportunities for variability, while then at the aspirational levels keeping it pretty consistent so that it is a thing you can kind of prepare for. I think what really contributes here though is the it's the phrase Bungie's been using since well before I got there, like that 30 seconds of fun. Like it starts for us at Bungie at make a core action game that feels awesome. Like it really does start from the like, how can this feel amazing? We want, popping a drag and seeing ether shoot out of its head, or like blowing the juice box on a Vex to feel amazing every time. And that there's nothing singular about that. That is each thing like that is built by, probably 50 people in legacy code that has lines in it like, don't touch this. Please don't touch this part of the code, commented into it so that we kind of protect the formula. And so it starts really from the core combat and then works out into your overall incentive design at the furthest away level, which is, your incentive design is, why am I going to come back and play this every day, forever or whatnot, which is a
Mhm.
question that, our company founder, Jason Jones, asks, like, why would I play this every day forever? It's a good question. And so thinking about that, you start to get into building incentive structures and incentive loops, and you can see how our incentive design has changed over time. Where, Destiny 1, we had a tray of 4 to 5 things that you could do every day. We added a quest log, which gave you a bigger list of stuff that you can do. And service games have really evolved since Destiny 1. Like we shipped Taken King with a quest log and some stuff to do every week, which is nothing compared to what games are shipping with today at the like incentive and behavior system level. Or even if you jump into Destiny 2 specifically, you have such a stack of things to do, which creates its own separate set of problems, which is how do you tutorialize and teach all of this and onboard. And I think, in the way that our live service our live service operations has been an area that, we went from we don't know too much about this. We need to get people in the building, help us level this up, trust them. I think that's a place where, we're going to need similar talent, similar super smart thinkers on how do you create an onboarding experience into this universe. Like we have a version of it that we've improved, but I think that there's pretty universal belief throughout the Destiny organization that it's a place where we've got to continue to do better.
I was wondering about that because as somebody, you mentioned that I had talked about playing Destiny 2 a couple of years ago when the pandemic started, and I jumped in pretty hardcore into it. And I, while I was playing, I was seeing a lot of players who were veterans out there, uh, flitting in and out of my experience, so at least as I recall, and reading a lot online about what people were doing. And I was wondering, as a noob, somebody who's brand new to this, how are they balancing keeping me fed and watered and interested, and the veterans who have been playing this for years now? How do you do that? What's your approach?
Oh, it's dude, this is like one of the great questions that the Destiny 2 team is staring at right now. Like this is one of the things that they're spending a bunch of time thinking about because it does become it does become like it does become like triage at a hospital, I think, in some ways, where you're like, we have these two patients, they're both important. We have this person who's never played Destiny and they're jumping in, and we have this person who's been with us for like hundreds and hundreds of hours. How do we feed both? And this is just a tremendous challenge for us. I won't speak for any other service game, uh, because our game is so persistent. And even, at and I take full responsibility for the challenges that the persistence has created, whether it's the story persistence, where like I think the Witch Queen is an awesome campaign. The team's done a great job. And if you've never played Destiny and you see the Witch Queen campaign's really cool, people seem to like it. This game, the reviewers like it and the players seem to like it too. I'm going to jump in and play it. It's possible you will enjoy it as a shooter on its own. It's possible and likely that you'll be like, what in the actual heck is going on here? What is going on here? I have no idea. And that's in part because we've really connected. And again, this is, I I bear the responsibility of this. Like this was at I felt like there was an opportunity with Destiny to do something like such a stupid story. So I felt like there was an opportunity to connect the seasons to the expansions in a way that we weren't. We had a number of seasons that were, awesome on their own, but they didn't really feel like they were going anywhere. And this story from when I was a kid came to mind of something to the effect of, my grandpa took me to see the Transformers movie as a kid, and in the Transformers movie, which if you haven't seen it, maybe just stop, just turn this off, don't listen anymore because I'm gonna ruin it for you. um, Optimus Prime dies, like Megatron becomes Galvatron. The world of Transformers changes dramatically, and there's like the cynical reasons for why, like we could sell you more toys or whatever. And that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is you came home, and as a kid, it's like impossible to find cartoons on TV, So the next time I saw Transformers, the show picked up where the movie left off. And I remember feeling, I don't remember anything about the episode, but I remember the feeling of like, oh my gosh, like this is all connected. It's all going somewhere. Like the people who made the movie were thinking about the cartoons, and the cartoons could be leading to the next movie, which I don't think there ever was one. And that like feeling of connectivity was what I felt like a tremendous opportunity for the Destiny team to pursue. And so we did. We did pursue that, and that machine, and the team's done. Oh my gosh, like an amazing job. Like our narrative team has done an incredible job of building out this series of threads that are all heading somewhere, and it is in fact all heading somewhere. And it can feel a bit like if you weren't there for the ride, that you're coming late to the party, and that's a really hard hurdle to overcome. And so I think for us, when we look at this arc, we call it the end of the light and dark saga. We're going to have that kind of relighting of the engines, so to speak, of welcoming folks back in. And I think that we've got to continue to figure out how to like slope the floor for folks coming back into the universe, and what are the tools that we can create, what can Bungie create to help that? What can we build to help that? There's certainly the like go watch amazing YouTubers, summaries of the story so far. But we shouldn't expect our players to do that. Those services that those YouTubers provide is awesome. But we got to figure out a way to do a little bit more here. Because this is the, when you're if you consider the two projects together, we're in year, 8 or so of this. A lot's gone on over the last 8 years, and you can't play all of it. So how can we help folks catch up? Like it's a really tough problem.
Well, as a player, yeah, I can totally understand that, and I see it in other live services games too, right? I think everybody sort of faces that challenge. Have you all looked at other games and tried to sort of reverse engineer their approaches to that balance?
I mean, I think there's two pretty interesting. I'll pick two opposite ends of the spectrum in a bunch of ways. Like you have something like Fortnite, which has gigantic in-world events that change the island in this like profound way, or introduce new characters, new entrants into their universe in some cool way that you can grab their skins for and stuff. And so they have and their game mode is they have one like Fortnite Battle Royale. I know there's creative and there's other stuff within that, but the core like come play this game, come play this game together. Like that is the like kind of maximum pick up and play. And then I think on the other side of the spectrum, you have something like World of Warcraft, which is the subscription based, whatever, $15 a month, make a character, but latest expansion will kick you up to start with everyone else. And then that story, is, you feel like you can experience it without a bunch of the tendrils from before. But if you get more out of it, if you've experienced stuff from the past. I think we're probably more right now we're definitely more in the Warcraft serialized. We're like more serialized, I think, probably than Warcraft right now is my guess. I haven't played World of Warcraft in some time, uh, but I think we want to get to a place where we are looking at it maybe through a slightly different lens, or we've figured out a way to operationalize entering the universe and catching up quickly, with from a story perspective. But as we've really invested in the team and talent from the story perspective, like we want to make sure that people are gonna get to experience what they're creating.
Uh, Well, that makes sense. And I liked your two examples, and you did mention that you know on the opposite end of Fortnite, you have a game that has a lot more sort of ways to play. And I think that's Destiny. I mean, I look at Destiny in terms of all of the gameplay experiences one can have. It is incredibly varied for a live services game, and especially when it comes to the experiences I can have PVE or PvP. And when it comes to those two sort of buckets, how do you divide the team's attention between PvE and PvP, if you
So
divide it at all?
I mean, it's gonna. Yeah, I mean, like this is. My mental model is probably a little out of date here because the Destiny 2 team is in the process right now. I think of doing some work with PvP. So for us during the period when I was working on it, this was a thing we had a hard time with because games that are PvP games have entire teams focused on making this mode map set of maps in an arena game amazing. And what Destiny is those games are like delicious. It's like a delicious burger joint. You're like, dude, we got to make burgers. We got to get good buns. We got to have awesome cheese, great veggies. That's what we're doing. We're making burgers. The PvP games, and you can make a tremendous living making awesome burgers. You can do it. The restaurant metaphor we use for Destiny, although maybe not as flattering as a delicious burger, is the Cheesecake Factory. Cheesecake Factory's got burgers. That cheese filled burger is pretty good. It's not bad. You know, it's also got cheesecake, which is kind of what it's known for. It's got, you want Italian? Got there like Cheesecake Factory's approval rating is probably pretty high. You can go there and you're like, tonight's Kung Pao chicken. Let's get it. And so Destiny 2 is it the best Kung Pao chicken of all time? Maybe not. I leave that to you, dear listener, to decide. But if you're interested, they have it. You can try it. And I think Destiny 1 and two's design, this like activities for every mood design is really about at any one point, you know, at any one point, some audience is not going to be as satisfied as they want to be with part of the game. Like I know the raid folks would love to have more time and make more raids and have more resources. And I know the campaign folks would like everyone feels I mean, I think everyone on the development team feels like their work could be better if they had more people, more time, more opportunity. Similarly, I think every player who's playing the game probably feels like the thing they love could be better if we could just spend the time to make it better. Like, yeah, and that push pull is yeah, it is going to be a tale as old as time on a game like this, a game that is as large and sprawling as the Cheesecake Factory's menu. There's a yeah, and it comes back to feeding mouths, and it's tough. And you look at we spent a tremendous amount of resources, to bring back modes that players loved from Destiny One, and sometimes those resources are worth it, and sometimes you look at it and you're like, we couldn't support it as well as we wanted to, or that became cheaters paradise, like lesson learned. And so we have to figure out how to what's the behavior that we're looking for in our players, like what do we want to incentivize, what are we trying to guide them to, and then make sure that we're supporting that. And we've been putting a pretty significant emphasis on PVE content for a little while.
Yeah.
And I know that the gameplay team and I think Joe and the team are definitely like I'm sure there's more that they want to do with PvP.
That's such a great answer and probably the best analogy I've heard in the game space.
Thank you.
Really good. Uh, Before you were talking a little bit about live services as a just in a more technical way, and I'd love just to take a couple minutes and ask about some of the underlying support that we don't really think about as game designers and people who tell stories in games. So, what have become some of the most important behind the scenes live service features that Bungie has built? Just
Hmm.
if you can name just a couple of them that have really helped the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a technical feature, but it's an extension of the service. We have oh man, I'm gonna feel so bad if I get the acronym wrong. We have so many acronyms. Like player support in DOC is a thing we did not do at all in the before time, and instead now it's a staffed group of folks who are working super hard behind the scenes. They do not get any credit of any kind uh, for their work. The closest thing I think they've received for like public credit for their work is like a few years ago. I think the team received an award at the Game Awards about like best community. And they're like, yeah, that's part of their work. Like part of their work is facilitating relationships both between players, developers. Part of their work is helping us see issues, identifying issues when they come up. Like it's not a typically now not typically, so in case there's a designer on the team who has done this, like I'm not trying to forget your moment, but typically it's not the game designer who uncovers the bug at retail of like infinite super or Telesto's broken again. Typically it's not them. It's typically not them who's pointing it out to the development team. Oftentimes it's found by players and then surfaced through player support. And so that's this thing that like it's so important to our work and our ability to understand and tune and balance the game and update the game rather than balance. Balance isn't the right word for a game like Destiny. That like this group of super talented individuals, like it's not a technology, it's a team that's been built to really help us, and they're one group of folks. Similarly, we have teams that again, I'm going to totally script the names, but we have teams that are there when we launch new seasons or new expansion sets who are on round the clock support. And when the game when folks like me are on Christmas break or holiday break, there are folks who are called in and working and are still doing it. Like we have a bunch of teams like that who help keep the service running. It's a thing that is completely taken for granted, I think, even even by the way that we talk about it as designers and leaders. But our service uptime on Destiny is really high, and it's not because the directors did a good job or because we had fucking killer art or amazing production leadership. It's because we have a service infrastructure and a talented group of folks who are committed to keeping the game online and up and running, and that's just happening as as like we're eating dinner or asleep, and so those folks really are like unsung superstars for the service.
That is so great. You're pointing out both those teams. That makes a lot of sense. And it is ultimately about the people, right? When we make these games. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, One of the biggest changes that happened is going to free to play a while back.
Yeah.
And I remember when you made that change, and I was as a player and as a developer wondering, and what was the motivation? What what were some of the? It was such a big shift. What drove it?
So, I mean, I think one of the things that drove I'll say we're hybrid free to play is the way that we talk about it internally, because we still sell boxes, we still sell seasons, but we do have that free entry point, and some of it was just to help refill the pipeline with players. We wanted it to be we want Destiny, and I don't it's not there today, and Destiny 2 really needs to continue to deliver great experiences to its audience today. But we want the Destiny projects to be projects that you ultimately can kind of recommend and jump into and play. And so, to anyone. Now that doesn't mean we're shifting to make we're not going to make something that is so different from what we have today. But we do want to think more about that evergreen entry point. And so with the shift to free to play, adding free entry point really for us was about, continuing to reload the player base, continue to bring more people into the universe. Like we've always felt, like a little bit of a chip on our shoulders, I think, about Destiny, with the like, this should be, why isn't this bigger? This should be like, well, this is just Bungie. It's just our ambition and our appetite. Like we want to make, one of our, we want to put a dent in the universe. And so, we look at our work and we look at, other games and we think why aren't we that big? What do we need to do? How do we need to keep growing? What do we need to do to get better? It's like, latent competition. Like none of these other games know we're, competing with them at all. Like it's just stuff we tell ourselves. Right. And so part of it was for free to play, really, to kind of continue to grow the audience. But we want to grow the audience because we think we're trying to provide something that matters. We're trying to make a place. With Destiny projects, we're trying to make a place that you can go to kind of escape a bunch of this, like to go to hang out with your friends. Like one of my buddies, when Destiny 1 came out, talked to me about the way the game made him feel. It made him feel like he was just like sitting on a basketball court shooting free throws, just almost like therapeutic, and then shooting free throws with a buddy. And that's like still one of the best ways I've heard someone describe Destiny. Was it's just like, shooting baskets with a friend. The joy of a swish comes from, the gas shooting out of a cabal's head when you pop it with a hand cannon. And so we're trying to make something that is a place that you can escape to, this world that you can go get to for a few hours to escape your, to whatever you're trying to get away from for a little bit. And that's like part of why we do it. Like the company's vision is, worlds that inspire friendship and change lives for the better. And we want we want Destiny or any of the worlds that we build at Bungie to be places where you can find this like very human need. Like a bunch of us want the same thing. We want it in different flavors, but we just want to belong. And so, with Destiny, you asked this question like, what are you trying to do with the Destiny universe? You asked it, a while ago now. We want to make sure it's something that, you know, people, of like very different can belong to, a place that places they can go to feel community, to grow community, to feel friendships, whether it's, again, on the couch holding the joypad or on the couch holding the controller, or a remote control. It's all about building places that people can belong.
That is such a great answer. I hesitate to ask anything else because it was an awesome answer, but I want to ask some more questions. So I'm just going to ask you a couple more.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
when y- you guys are one of the 800-pound gorillas in this industry when it comes to live service games, and I know that a lot of us who are in the development field, we look at the the dominant players and we tend to ask ourselves, as players and as developers, is there a limit? Is there a limit to the number of large community-based games that can exist at the same time, given that we all have a limited amount of time? What is your feeling on that?
I think mathematically there's got to be a limit. There's only going to be so many people with only so much time. And a thing that happens, I think a thing that happens though is your populations swell and they decline. And the declining population isn't entirely a bad thing. Like what if Project X is holding it, you know, again, this is not Destiny data at all, so no one should read into it. But if Project X is holding it 1 million users a day and holds it for 10 years, isn't that awesome? Like, isn't that you built an amazing community that lived for 10 years? Like, I can't think of the name of the gosh, I wish I had it summonable. But there are games that came out 15, 20 years ago that are still in live service. They've turned into they're still being run by RuneScape. There it is.
Hmm.
It's just an old librarian in my head running up and down. Like, where's this reference? Like original RuneScape still, you can still play like OG feeling and looking RuneScape. That game's been out forever. They've got an enduring community. The folks who are still that I believe, and I don't know, I don't have any knowledge of it, but I believe the folks who are still working on that game love it deeply as players, as developers, and they're in the midst of a labor of love. EverQuest, people are still going back and playing EverQuest.
Which blows my mind.
Yeah, people. There's World of Warcraft is like had like one of its biggest years ever in the last like 2 or 3 years or something. Like these games, like they find a spot and initially, sure, they some of them might come out and like flare up like phosphorus and be huge, and then kind of contract down into like that like core player base. And if you can get to the spot where you've got a team who's willing to continue to support it and excited to continue to support it, and you've got players who want to play it, I don't know that there's like a hard cap. I think it's competitive in a way that's like absolutely frightening. Like the things that when I think about projects that have come out in as like projects that when they were announced or something, I would look at and go like, oh shit, that looks scary, man. Those guys are gonna come out and just punch us right in the teeth. And a bunch of them do. They come out, they punch us in the teeth, and we just keep after it. Like so, if there's like we're just keep. This is like, yeah, you can't beat someone who will keep getting back up when they get knocked down. And I think certainly on the Destiny MMO projects, we have gotten beat up, we've gotten punched in the mouth, gotten knocked down, the seven count, 8 count. We get up and we keep coming back, and we're gonna keep doing it. Like we're gonna keep trying to learn and keep trying to do better. And so I think there's going to be more games, more service games in this space. I think it's going to be a competitive landscape, and I think there's a ton of opportunity for projects that maybe people. This is gonna like some folks will be unhappy about this, I'm sure, but like projects that haven't been service projects to have like service like experiences built into them. Like I'll pick, I again, no one's doing this, no one's making this. This is Luke Smith fantasy only. I nothing about it. I love the Metal Gear games, Ted. I love them. I love them. I love them so much. Metal Gear 5 is like one of my all-time comfort food games. I can boot it up anytime, just jump in and play it. I love it. Give me some Metal Gear 5. Give me an awesome multiplayer service game in Metal Gear 5. I'm in. Like I want to play it. Give me some excuses. Like let me come back to Metal Gear 5 every day forever. Figure it out. Like it's never gonna happen. No one's gonna do it. And so I'm just gonna sit here and hope. But like I think there's stuff like that. Like it's the thing, it's back to fandom, right? Like when you love something, you want more of it. You want more of it in different flavors and um yeah, and I'm not saying no one should listen to this and go, Luke said every single player game should become a service game. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, there are many ways to deliver experiences that fans and potential fans are going to love. And I'm not afraid of a world where there are more service games. I think if anything, it's going to challenge them all to do better and to find a better way in ways where, maybe that entity hasn't always.
I totally agree with you. That's the kind of competition that keeps our industry evolving in a really good way.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
finally, do you have any advice for folks who look at you and what you've accomplished in your career and say, "Wow, I want to do what he's doing someday"?
Advice is interesting. It yeah, yeah, it implies that yeah, it implies like a wisdom that I'm not sure that I have. I will talk about what has helped me the most along the way, and one of the things is not in my control, and one of them is in my control in terms of my approach. So there's really, I've been with one company for oh my gosh, yeah. I'm looking at a I'm looking at the clock right now. Just over 15 years. It was just 15 years for me at the beginning of May. I think about like, well, gosh, why? Like, there's not a lot of longevity, and there certainly isn't a lot of continuity of one person at one job. It's two things. One of them, again, not in your control, is opportunity. Opportunity comes in ways that are really hard to predict. It cannot be predicted. It has to be a thing that you're paying attention to and seizing when it comes. Like uh, there was no amount of times that working on Destiny One, that Jason could text me and say, "Hey, I'm looking at a thing. Can you come look at it?" I lived 2 blocks from the office. I'd do anything. Opportunities. I would take any opportunity I had because I it was both a career opportunity and for me, an opportunity to do the second thing. The second thing is learning. I'm at Bungie for 2 reasons, because I've had a bunch of opportunities and Bungie has facilitated me to keep learning and keep growing. And I believe the second thing, learning, can manifest in so many ways and really comes to like, what is the part of yourself you're trying to improve and master and grow? And is your manager, mentor, is your company willing to help you do that? If you're running a God, if you're like running a company and you can keep trying to find opportunities for your folks, opportunities to develop new opportunities, new skills, and then develop their learning. Like you can keep people around way longer and for way more than money or whatever. Like talk about this some at work too. Like there's only so much money anyone's going to pay you. It's like totally finite, and but the thing that you can really try to push your company to do is to help you continue to learn, whether it's yeah, there's so many ways to do it, and there's a really inward looking part of that. Like, learning isn't like your manager telling you a thing. Like, that might be part of it. Learning is also like authentically looking within yourself to say, what do I need to do to grow? What do I see in myself that I want to improve, and how can I make these changes? Like, what can I do? And so, yeah, if I was to think about like advice, it's like, are you are you open to the opportunities that are coming to you? Are you seeing them? Are you capitalizing on them to the best of your ability? Again, with respect for your work life balance and things like that. This is not a siren song to go crunch or anything like that. Not for a second. Are you making the most of those opportunities, and are you gardening your abilities? Are you gardening a sense of learning in yourself? And if you're a manager or a leader, like, are you trying to help the people around you learn? Like, are you trying to help that in them? Because the intrinsic growth is the stuff that matters. Like the intrinsic sense of mastery. That's the stuff that really matters. That's the stuff that's going to give purpose and create drive. And you know, that's what it's been for me. Take it or fucking leave it. But opportunity and learning are the two. That's the coal that's kept my fire burning.
That is awesome advice for anybody in any industry. So, Luke, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing everything you have today. We covered a lot, and I've learned a lot from listening to you. So,
Thank
appreciate it.
thank you for the invitation, and then like the pleasure and honor is all mine.